what is the largest group you've ever DM'd for? Starting with Kyle. Give me a number.
I think my largest is 14.
Oh my goodness. Allie?
Three separate groups combined into one. So I think it was 16, a 6, a 5, and a 5.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. Sean?
My very first campaign as a DM ever, 12 players, and that was 12 players for 6 months, and that was a weekly game.
Wow. Haley. Which is why you're here for the small group part of the show. So I'm curious with large groups, how, maybe let's start with Sean. Sean, how do you keep things moving? Like, how do you keep 12 people interested when their turn in combat is, let's say, a minute per person or 30 seconds per person? Sean, how do you keep them interested?
Well, one of the first things I did is I'd played for about 2 years up to this point, and I'm like, I can do this. So I did that little 2-person session to make sure I had the feel for it. And then when I stepped into the role as DM, the one thing I saw that I was going to have the problem of keeping, because you get that large group and you get that one initiative arc. Different initiative every round. It's combat. It's chaotic. And it kept changing the initiative. So we'd finish out that round, and that could be a 10, 15-minute round, depending on what was going on. Roll initiative for the next round. And it would change it up. So you wouldn't just be sitting back your board, because all of a sudden you just went, but you see an advantage, and you jump back into the combat because you're now first in the initiative order.
That's cool. Were there things that players could purposely do to affect their initiative order? Like, if you do this, you'll be able to bump yourself up a little bit, or?
A lot of times what I was doing is I was making it where if they wanted to prep something, that would be, they could prep it at this round. So there's a lot of the mages and the clerics, they would prep something, a spell that would, it was a little longer. This is going back into second edition. But they would prep, and if they prepped, that gave them a +5 to their initiative, because they've been prepping all around that last round, getting this spell ready to cast, and so it would automatically at least push them up a little bit into the initiative order.
Yeah,
and it was, as everybody that sat at that table was going, "You are insane! Why are you doing this?" And I'm like, "Are you not having fun?" "No, we're absolutely amazed at what you're keeping this going." But it's like, how are you doing this? And it was the matter of, especially in the combats, the wave effect. They had an ambush, Cobalt ambush, a 60 Cobalt ambush.
Oh my God.
And so they were sitting there, and they were getting hit from sides, all the traps and the stuff, and the log swings coming down at them and trying to take them out and everything. And so they finish off this wave, and as they're like, okay, as soon as anybody showed any signs of healing, I would launch the next wave. And it was just this wave after wave. And so anytime any of them tried to do any healing, here comes another wave. And it was just this, and so it kept it up. And it just kept, because then now all of a sudden you've got all the players. They're actually, because now they're like, oh crap. And we had minis, and we had the map. And so they're placing where they're at. Now I have them like, okay, you two, go. And they're out running off doing scouting around to actively keep an eye out for any next wave. And they all got involved and invested in what was happening in the combat, even though it was going to take 10 minutes to get to their turn.
Sure.
Their character's now out, running scouting to make sure that there's no more ambushes.
Yeah.
Because, oh my God, somebody's got to be able to drink a potion. So.
Oh, that's fun.
That's amazing.
I'm going to go from that question and think about combat, but then the other question I had is, what about like role-playing and social interaction? When you've got 14 players, how do you make sure that everybody's, getting a word in edgeways? I'm having enough trouble with the 5 of us. So, Ali, I think you wanna talk about that. How do you keep social interaction working when there's so many players?
So, luckily, our huge sessions were mostly combat, and they ended up dividing rather quickly into smaller groups. And text RPs happened, like in between the fighting, because it was a siege on a town that they were protecting. But my second D&D group, not my first, it was an in-person group, started with 8 players. And especially in our West March now, that's mostly online, that we have 2 people who are hard of hearing. We found that being able to just make sure crosstalk is kept to a minimum, and being able to like push to talk is great on Discord, and also people saying in the chat if somebody like says something aside to somebody else. It's like, oh hey, yeah, these 2 kind of have the spotlight at this exact moment, but Alondra's gonna lean over to Faith and be like, wow, these people are insane. Like Alondra's not like that, but like that sort of thing is like, oh, it's like Alondra like nudges Faith. Tawny's like, look at these idiots, like stuff like that. Like kind of like the stuff that would be crosstalk at a normal table, since we're making sure that people can always hear what's going on, especially if it's happening in front of them. Like people aren't just gonna be silent watching the one person speak like we are right now. If you're in a group of people in the middle of a town, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, I agree with him, I agree with her, I think that she's insane, I think that we need to do this. So it's like, yeah, you're gonna talk aside. So having the chat also being an option for them to speak to each other. And also we've had some people who, especially in a bigger group, and sometimes we get audiences. Sometimes there'll be 16, 20 people in the chat watching a 3 or 4 person session. Like listening, watching the combat, listening to the RPs, and people kind of get shy. Mm-hmm. And you would know this from being a teacher. Like sometimes with kids and with people who are shy, who are kind of nervous, you got to be like, okay, let's do this. Like everyone, we're insane. We're playing a game. Let's have fun. Somebody's gonna do something weird. Somebody's gonna it's like, oh yeah, prompt them, that sort of thing. And so being able to just kind of have NPCs around to kind of also help people RP, because sometimes with bigger groups, people don't want to RP. People are like, I'm shy. In a group, if you have 5 or 6 or 7 other people in like the session with you, and then another 5 or 10 just watching silently, making commentary in the chat, you're gonna be like, I don't know about this. I don't really want to make a fool of myself. It's like, it's okay. We're all fools.
Yeah.
We're all playing a role-playing game.
We're all telling each other a story. Like we're telling each other a story for a couple of hours.
We are playing pretend on the playground like we're 5. The only difference is that there's rules. It's like, yeah.
And like, that role-playing bar is so important, that once you get one person who kind of raises it, then everybody kind of, even the shyer players, they start to feel more comfortable. And as soon as one player does a voice, then other players will try it, right? But I like the idea of, like, especially as a DM, when it comes to social interaction, like trying to draw out those shyer players, especially in a big group. But I love your idea of, doing the role playing almost through a separate medium altogether.
Yeah, a lot of especially because our West March has so many players, and we can't fit all of it. We play bi-weekly because we have over 20 players. Like, I think we have close to 25 players in the entire West March.
Wow.
And so we can't fit everybody into 1 week, so it's bi-weekly. And if there's a little RP that you want to happen or that would happen, but we don't have time for in the session, it's like, yeah, so you guys can do that there. You guys can go into the text RP chats and just RP out the conversation that you guys would have had around the fire, over dinner, figuring out what you guys are going to do, meeting another PC that you want to go on an adventure with. like stuff like that. So having that text RP also kind of helps because, especially for the shyer players too, who aren't really used to voice RPing, a lot of them have read fan fiction, read books, written fan fiction, written short stories. They kind of understand that, and seeing everyone kind of doing that too, it kind of helps to like have a good 30, 45 minutes, and plus it takes place over days, to really think it out and get comfortable with your character and RPing with other people. And sometimes we've had RP, like text RPs, that have had quite a few people. And so it kind of helps there. Like somebody will be in our text RP chat, that's like in our commentary chat, being like, "Hey, I'm typing something out to say to this. Uh, like I'll let you guys know when I'm done. You'll see it, so just so that you guys don't move the conversation along." It's like, "Oh yeah, of course." Da, da, da. Like it's a lot of coordinating, especially because it takes place over a lot of time. But it also helps with people who aren't super available, except for the dedicated session time that they figured out works for them.
Yeah. That's cool. Kyle, I had a question for you. When because you worked with a big party as well, the idea of splitting the party. See, when I play with like 4 or 5 players, they know splitting the party means that someone's going to die.
That's death. Death.
But in a bigger group, you can definitely afford to do that. So do you leave that up to the players, or do you kind of build it into the story that this is going to happen?
It totally depends on the kind of thing that we're doing, right? So I do sort of 2 different kinds of larger groups. So I've got the ones where it's a campaign, and then on one of the servers that I run, we actually do a battle royale every week. So it's just combat. And that is, like upwards of like 12 people, in combat at the same time, just trying to beat the crap out of each other. And so for me, what I found is it's a vastly different situation. One thing that has helped me enormously, and I totally suggest any DMs or GMs go out there, if you can find like a course on Skillshare or Masterclass or something that's all about directing, like directing plays, it is astonishingly useful, because in a situation like that, your job is to allow the creativity to happen in front of you and to mold it. It's not about you directing. It's not about you making something happen. It's about you having faith in the people that you've brought to the table. And a huge part of that is setting up expectations, but allowing people to do their own thing. And then you sort of like, nudge it here and nudge it there. And then, tap this down and lift this up. And, understanding it. A huge part of that is understanding some basic human psychological tropes. Like you definitely have the shy people, and what can you do to help bring them into the role-playing thing, and part of that is just making sure that the people around them are being inclusive and being supportive of their chance to role play. And what I found is it's the shy people so many times, like I've sort of seen 2 types of shy people. You've got the shy people that are shy because no one's ever given them a voice, right? No one's ever listened to the things that they're saying. And they will, if given support, slowly start coming out of their shell, and they will create incredible bonds with their character and with the people at the table and with you, because it's the first time they feel heard. It's a huge part of dealing with a large group is figuring out the various sort of psychological archetypes and how can I utilize these to help each other. So you've got like I'm sure you have not noticed, I will talk a lot. And I will, but I do have a breadth of knowledge to back it up,
Sure.
So there is, but so you have those players, and you sort of, what I'll do is I'll partner them with a shyer player, and be like, hey, help this person to help uplift this person, help bring them into the conversation, ask them questions about stuff. Don't demand an answer. Don't put them on the spot, but help them, feel comfortable actually voicing their own opinion. And when that starts to happen, and for me, that gets set up in like a session 0, where it's like you actually let people, like, what kind of player are you? Are you comfortable with this? What's going on? And for a large group, it's even more important, I think, than with small groups, because there's so much happening at the table, you know. But like the other side of it, yeah.
I'm imagining that you have to like frame what's happening on such a huge level with that many people.
Yeah.
That like I can't even imagine. Like my husband and I, it's like the two of us, and the largest group I've done is 2, not the 2 of us, but 2. Yeah. And it's very easy for me to be like, I'm gonna control the frame now. We're moving on, or whatever. I can't even imagine having to do that with that many people, especially knowing people who like to play RPG games. They're normally very boisterous.
Yeah. Boisterous, and they're used to like a sandbox so they can go everywhere. And so I do have situations where I was like, you know, there'll just be a moment where I'm like, so that country doesn't exist yet, but it'll exist next week. So no, you can't do
that. I've actually had things happen when you need to corral them back in because they have decided, oh, it's a known game world. I'm going to go to this village. I've always wanted to go there, so we're going to try. No, there's currently a border war going on right now. You can't go that way. That pass is literally closed. So
love it.
You just let them have as much space as you think you can, and then no, we have borders. They're closed. There's fighting. There's whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So a little bit of railroading is at times necessary
for the larger groups.
I wouldn't label it railroading. It's boundaries. It's establishing boundaries. You know, and
with the large groups you have to, because there is if you don't, there is zero way you're going to control it. So
you know, so one of the best control methods that I have found is pins. What I'll do is I'll just be like, you know, somebody will start a thing and I'll be like, okay, pin that. Hold on to that. That'll come in a second. What's going on with you? What's going on with you? Okay, now this is the pin. Okay, here's the connection. Okay, and you're just sort of pulling different things from various people until you have a cohesive story. But the other thing too, but on the other side of it is the combat thing, right? Combat with like 12, 15 people is friggin' crazy, you know? And especially if you have different levels of knowledge going on. So like in the battle royale that we have on our server, one of the things that we do is we try to bring in people that like either haven't played D&D before or are new to role-playing games and create a supportive environment for them to sort of explore it, right? Which is one of the reasons I started the battle royale, because then it really helps with not only learning your battle mechanics, but learning your RP mechanics too. What I implemented was a 2-minute time limit per thing. And literally, if you cannot get it down within 2 minutes, your turn skipped. And in a battle royale, that means you're probably going to die the next round. You know,
one thing I was wanting to try, and this is with a medium-sized group, like 4 people, 4 or 5, is I kind of wanted to try with one of my groups to establish a rule that combat is purely done in role-playing. So there's no table talk. There's no, should I go over here? What should I do? Hey, if you do this, then I get to do that. And
I punished the hell out of metagaming.
Okay,
in my combat.
I was kind of thinking.
No.
I was thinking that would help with the larger groups too. That there's no table talk. There isn't out of character talk.
Well, there's one thing that I actually experimented with that I love, that I haven't really figured out how to do with the groups that I'm working with now. But I would have, when I would do tabletop sessions, I would have people actually write on like an index card what they're doing on their turn, because a round is 6 seconds. So initiative is the difference between like 3.5 seconds and 3.25 seconds, you know? So what I would do is I'd have them all do their things, put it out for the round. They would have 60 seconds to write it out. I would look it over. I'd spend 60 seconds looking it over. And then I would tell them the story of what happened in that round and how this person didn't get out of the way in time and this happened or that happened. And there, you know, you try to do this and this, you know, and so it creates this beautiful sort of chaos where it almost feels like a game show where you're trying to figure out what everyone else is going to be doing so that you can make decisions about what's going on. And then suddenly the DM's like, nope, Almost. You almost did it, but no. That fireball caught your entire party in it because
Yeah.
super fun. But that's useful. But really, just I found just like really establishing limits is the big thing for a large group, so that they all understand it, they get it. No one's feeling singled out by anything. It's just here's what the rules that everybody's abiding by, and this is how we're going to do it.
One last question, and whether you're a large group DMGM or a small group, you answer it whatever way works for you. If you were to say, what is the key characteristic of a player for a large group or a small group, what would you say it is? And I'll take one away from the large group people. That is that the people have to pay attention. So if you were to think about one key characteristic, what would be the thing that makes it work for a small group or a large group? What kind of player fits into that?
I know that for my group, and it fits into both the larger and the smaller. If you have that one player that is knowledgeable enough about the game that he's not metagaming it, he's helping the other players basically stay within the rules and the boundaries of the roles that they're playing. I have one player in my group, and I love him to death for that, because I have a very strict no rules lawyer policy. I've literally killed a character to tick the player off enough to make him leave the game. I'm like, no, I'm the DM. I say what goes, not you. You're a player in my game, and he didn't. And so that stopped real quick. And so while this player, he knows the rules backwards and forwards, he's not a rules lawyer. He is an asset to me. Having that one player, a larger or a small, where I've actually even used him to sit there and go, that is this way, right? Yes, okay, I make sure I had it.
Yeah.
But he won't call it, and he won't call me on something because he knows it's my game. So having that player that knows the rules, that for the other players is a very key asset, especially when you have newer players, inexperienced players. He can help them by saying, your character has this ability, so when you want to start using it, and a lot of times he'll wait until after they've done something and they didn't do it, they didn't use that feature, or they didn't do it correctly. He'll then say, hey, next time you try that, remember that your character has this ability and he can do this or that. And so he's letting them try to learn it, and when they don't, then he just gives them that hint. So he's, like I said, he's not metagaming it where he's, oh, hey, don't forget to add your +3 because you're proficient in this toolkit. He waits until after the fact. And so
if I were to sum it up, kind of a cooperative player who understands they're not the DM.
Right. Who has a really solid understanding of the rules and understands he is a player assisting other players.
Nice.
Not a secondary DM.
Yeah. Allie, what about you? What would be a key characteristic for a player in a large group?
I honestly enjoy the teacher's pet. Like, the people who really love the game, and sometimes you have cats. I've got a bunch of squirrel cat hybrids that I have to herd sometimes. Like, I do the clap thing to get all their attention. So I go, and then one of them pops their head up, does it, and then I do it again, and then everyone's like, oh yeah, and they all clap. I'm like, okay. And I love having the teacher's pet who will help me herd the cats, who also will sometimes be like, okay, well, I see the plot hook that everyone else is their brain cells aren't turned on, that they're like, yeah, we see this, but we want to go to Fantasy Taco Bell over there. And so I enjoy the teacher's pet who just is like, guys, what about this over here? Look, don't worry, I see you. Yeah, let's go over this. This is really interesting. And then they find the plot thread, and they're like, and everyone goes, oh yeah, this is cool. Let's look at this. And so I enjoy the teacher's pet. I enjoy the person who just is super enthusiastic about playing the game, is always like, hey, I was thinking about my character and I want your opinion. Like before we even started, I want your opinion on which spells I should take, what looks more in character. Like I know this spell would be better for the game, but I don't think he would have that. I think he would have this one. Oh, I don't know what to do with this character. I like, and they come to me and they're like, oh, I need help with their backstory. I need this. I need that. Can I help you spur everyone? Is there anything I can help you with to kind of herd all of them? And I'm like, absolutely. I love the teacher's pet. I love the person who's just like, I'm super excited and I'm gonna help you with everything. I'm like, hey, can you check this real quick? It's gonna be coming up. I just want you to find the stat block and send it to me because I don't own any of the books.
Yeah, so once again, we have a person who understands this is a cooperative venture, right? Very important. Kyle.
No, I think that in a word, the one thing that helps more than anything else is faith. It is having faith in your DM having faith in your players having faith in each other. Understanding that while you might not know exactly what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, what's going to happen, that you have faith that everybody at the table is here to do the same thing and that they are able to do the same thing. And I've found personally that if you establish that faith with your players, they will rise to any occasion that you want, because it's not something you get in your day-to-day life most of the time, you know? So that's for me, short and sweet.
And Haley, what about you with small groups? What would you say is a key characteristic?
Okay, so hear me out on this one. Just, I'm going to say it and you're going to want to giggle, and you will, it's fine. But I think for people who do much better with smaller groups is a desire for intimacy. It's this desire for very intense, emotional, yet fun interactions where they are the hero of their own story. I think we all read things like the epic fantasy novels, like Lord of the Rings, and my brain is only coming up with Lord of the Rings, but you know what I'm talking about, where there's that character and they are the hero. Frodo Baggins or Samwise Gamgee, depending on who you talk to, is the hero. Is the hero of the story. And I feel like if you are a player that wants that very intimate and epic experience in your life that's very focused, being in a smaller group where it's just the fellowship, it's just the four little hobbits, that's the fellowship for me, then that would be the best scenario. And for like my husband and I, both being epic fantasy readers and writers, it was like, it just made sense. And we started playing when it was the middle of the pandemic, so we couldn't play with other people. It was just the two of us. And now the idea of playing with any of the rest of your guys' group scares the living hell out of me. No, I couldn't do it. I would end up sitting in a corner and be like, this is chaos, I'm out. I think it's that desire for intimacy and the epicness of a huge story brought down to the table. And it's just between you and the person across from you.
Oh.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks. Cooperative, understanding that there's a cooperative play, trusting each other and having faith in each other, and then intimacy and if I could add vulnerability, that all those things. I mean, when you add those things together, that sounds like a pretty fun game to me.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they all link together too.
I'm really happy to have had this conversation with the four of you. Thank you so much, Haley and Sean, Allie, and Kyle, for joining us tonight. And we will be back with a new set of panelists. If you're interested in your DM, then contact me on Twitter at Midlife Dices, and I can get you into the Discord, and then we go on from there. Thanks, everybody. Check at Midlife Dices on Twitter for information on upcoming episodes. And we'll be back. Thanks, everybody.